Globalization, a concept subject to spirited debates, has been lauded as a powerful solution for global issues and condemned for its potential to favour the privileged few. Undeniably, globalization wields a profound influence on our world, altering the way businesses and governments function. Let's take a deeper look. To illustrate this, consider that trade accounted for over 70% of global GDP in 2017, up significantly from less than 25% in 1960, according to the World Bank. To understand the wide-reaching effects of globalization and its current significance for businesses, let's journey into its historical roots. Globalization is a process by which national and regional economies, societies, and cultures become interconnected through global networks involving trade, communication, immigration, and transportation. The origins of globalization are still a topic of debate, with some sources tracing it back as far as the Bronze Age, which was approximately 4,000 years ago. Others place the starting point in the era of global exploration that began with Christopher Columbus's discovery of America in 1492. This pivotal moment marked the birth of the first global trade networks, led by European powers, and is generally considered the initial wave of globalization. During this era, businesses and trade started to span across oceans, and this phase persisted for over a century. Moving into the 19th century, globalization entered a new stage. Technological advancements like the steam engine further facilitated international trade, accelerating the speed and scale of business transactions. Additionally, a lack of major wars contributed to rapid growth during this period. This era was characterized by significant waves of immigrants moving across the globe, with more than 20 million people leaving Europe for distant shores between 1850 and 1913. These historical roots have paved the way for the most recent ongoing wave of globalization, where computing plays a significant role. Although computers have existed in some form since at least the 1940s, a groundbreaking moment occurred with the creation of the first microprocessor by Intel in 1971. This development marked a significant leap towards modern computing, setting in motion a trend where companies could harness computing power to enhance their access to information and unlock economic opportunities. The interplay between globalization and the digital age has transformed the economic landscape, altering how businesses of all sizes operate and interact in the global market. During the post-war era, another significant development emerged: the rise of modern multinational corporations, often referred to as transnational corporations. While large corporations with global ambitions had existed for centuries, the period after World War II saw the birth of exceptionally massive corporate entities. In a 2017 comparison of the 100 largest economic entities worldwide, only 31 spots were occupied by governments, while the remaining 69 entities were multinational corporations. These corporations owed much of their expansion to a combination of factors, including advances in transportation and communication, the opening of new markets, and the ability to operate more efficiently in these new global markets. As multinational corporations rose to prominence, international trade evolved into three broad categories. First world industrialized nations embraced market economics and liberalized international trade policies. Centrally planned economies, which are exemplified by the Soviet Union, China, and parts of Eastern Europe. Lastly, there are developing countries, many of which gained independence in the post-World War II period. International trade stands out as perhaps the most significant driver of globalization. Today, in the midst of the most recent wave of globalization, we are witnessing the convergence of all the historical advancements in a tidal surge of progress. This culmination of historical trends has prompted modern businesses to take a different approach from their predecessors. Over the past 3 decades, corporations have increasingly turned to specialization in a crowded global arena. A specialized product with a comparative advantage finds its niche more easily. Competitive advantages refers to a country's or company's ability to produce a certain product or service more efficiently than others. This shift has elevated the international trade of intermediary products, which are the essential building blocks of consumer goods, such as electronic components. It has also led to a focus on specialized professional services, thanks to the distribution of competitive advantage. Developing nations often enjoy a competitive advantage in labor, making it easier for them to produce simpler, intermediary goods. Today, globalization finds itself at a crossroads. The rise of modern nationalism, exemplified by the former US President Donald Trump, championed an anti-immigrant protectionist stance that opposes the principles of globalization. However, information technology has brought people closer together than previous generations could have imagined, globalizing the exchange of ideas. Nonetheless, like all aspects of globalization, the spread and impact of this process have been uneven. Now, what if globalization was effectively controlled by just one business? We have had examples in the past. The story of a single business controlling globalization centers on the East India Company, which was founded in 1600 in England. Initially established for trading in the Indian Ocean region, the company was granted a royal charter that gave it exclusive rights to engage in English trade with the East Indies, modern-day Southeast Asia, and South Asia. This charter granted the company a virtual monopoly on trade with the East, marking both the birth of corporate cooperation. The East India Company's control over early globalization was marked by several key elements. Firstly, the company wielded a monopoly over the lucrative trade routes of the East Indies, giving it the power to regulate the flow of coveted commodities like spices, textiles, and tea to Europe. thereby enabling price-setting authority and even the formation of armies, effectively transforming it into a quasi-governmental entity. Additionally, over time, the company established territorial control in India, amassing considerable influence, enabling governments over large swaths of Indian subcontinent, encompassing economic, political, and military realms. Thirdly, the East India Company expanded its reach through strategic alliances with indigenous rulers and military conquests, ultimately laying the groundwork for the British Empire in India and the subsequent colonization of the subcontinent. Lastly, the company's influence on global markets was profound, redefining trade routes, introducing new products to Europe, and catalyzing shifts in the world's commerce dynamics, with a global demand for Indian goods signifying shaping the broader global economy. The East India Company's dominance in globalization was not without its challenges and criticisms. It led to the exploitation and abuse of power and resulted in many social and economic problems in the region it controlled. There was also significant resistance from local populations and competing European powers. The era when the East India Company controlled globalization is a remarkable chapter in history, demonstrating how a single business entity could wield immense power over global trade, politics, and culture. While modern globalization is characterized by multiple businesses, governments, and international organizations, the historical example of the East India Company serves as vivid illustration of the profound impact a single corporation can have on the world stage. Another example of time when globalization was controlled by just one business is the Standard Oil Company, led by John D. Rockefeller in the late 19th and early 20th centuries in the United States. Standard Oil was founded in 1870 and quickly became the dominant force in the American oil industry. It achieved this by acquiring and consolidating various oil-related industries. By the 1880s, Standard Oil controlled around 90% of the oil refining distribution in the United States. Standard Oil was known for its vertical integration, where it controlled every aspect of the oil production process, from drilling and refining to distribution. This vertical integration gave the company unprecedented control over the entire oil industry supply chain. Standard Oil's dominance had far-reaching consequences for global oil markets. It influenced oil prices, access to resources, and the strategic interests of nations. Its practices, such as predatory pricing and unfair business practices, raised concerns and led to the establishment of antitrust regulations in the United States. The US government, in response to growing concerns over Standard Oil's monopoly, took legal action against the company. In 1911, the US Supreme Court ruled to break up Standard Oil into multiple smaller companies, leading to the creation of the baby standards. These smaller entities went on to become major oil corporations, including Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron. Standard Oil Company, under the leadership of John D. Rockefeller, serves as another notable example in the history of globalization, where a single business entity gained unprecedented control over an industry. To sum it up, when one business controls an entire economy, it's a big deal. We're seeing this happen in history, like with the East India Company and Standard Oil. This can pose a problem because they can lead to unfair practices and harm the economy. To avoid this, it's important to have rules and competition in place to make sure everyone gets a fair chance and to keep the economy healthy. That concludes today's video. If you liked our content, hit that subscribe button so you can stay updated. Thanks for watching. Until next time.